everybody, welcome to episode 120 of the Askdap show, where I answer your Volkswagen and Audi questions. On this episode, I answer questions and you get a sneak peek of our new location. Okay, so we're under construction on our new location. It's been in progress for some time. If anybody who follows us religiously probably saw quite a while ago, I shot an Askdap when this place was completely empty. Today you're going to see we're going to go through and I'll answer questions from different spots in our new location, and you can get an idea, a feel for our total place. So we'll have more coming in the future once we have something to show, but right now we're basically just a mess of studs and wires and all kinds of other stuff like that. So we're still in the construction phase, but hopefully we'll be in here soon enough. Let's get into questions.
Adam Coppola via YouTube says, anyone having the glowing issue with these CC lights when the car is running after being turned off? I bought Philips LEDs and found they produce a glow when turned off.
Okay, so this comment was actually left on a video that we shot talking a long time ago. That was actually a pretty terrible video about CC LED interior lights. It was a DIY showing you how to install them. So the question he's having is around the lights glowing after you turn it off. It's actually very common for that to happen on CC models, or really all Volkswagen Audis. For if you want a quality set of LEDs, they have internal resistors for preventing issues with bulb monitoring. Well, the way bulb monitoring works is that it checks the resistance of the bulb and the voltage drop across the bulb to determine if it's out. If it sees a voltage drop across there, then it's going to be fine. If it sees too much or too little, it's going to think that there's a problem. So what happens is, if you have no voltage drop, it's going to think that the bulb is out, which is going to set a light. So the way they combat that is by putting a resistor in to draw that amount of current, because LEDs don't draw a lot of current by themselves versus an incandescent bulb. So what happens is those resistors remove that voltage and actually make the vehicle think that the bulb is not working fine, since it's drawing less power being an LED. With that said, what happens is that resistor holds some of that power in there, so when you turn off the car, some of the lights actually stay on and glow a little bit until that power is dissipated. So it's going to be normal on those vehicles. I would expect to see that on any of these type of bulbs that are going to hold that power into that resistor, and unfortunately it's just something that you have to deal with, but nothing is operating outside of spec. And even the factory kits, I don't know if that kit he's talking about is exactly the same as the factory Philips sets, but even the factory kits do have that a little bit as well.
Brendan via email says, I have a brand new stock GTI S with DSG. In normal drive mode, about 30 to 40, it likes to go into 5th gear, and when I push the gas, it seems to make the engine lug. Sounds somewhat metal yet plasticky at the same time when I give it gas. Unless I manually downshift or press the gas far enough to force a downshift, it doesn't go away. Is this normal and bad for the engine? Also, it seems like the DSG likes to run through the gears way too fast to get into gas-saving gears. Will a DSG Tune fix this? Will a DSG Tune keep me out of 5th at 30 miles per hour?
All right, so you have issues around your DSG. I certainly would expect that if you do have a DSG Tune, it's going to solve your problem, but let's talk about a little bit of this stuff real briefly. The noise you're experiencing when that happens, it's hard to say for sure. It could just be the engine lugging. It tends to create a little bit of vibration when that's happening. It could be like components in the engine compartment that are actually rattling, making that noise. It could just be the engine sound kind of because it's lugging and kind of struggling to get up there. I wouldn't worry about it. It's going to be pretty normal in that circumstance. Unfortunately, the only way to combat that is to either drive your car in sport mode. That would shift your car faster, or get a DSG Tune. It will kind of be a little bit of a better scenario, because you're going to be maximizing the way that the engine and trans kind of work together. It won't shift real fast all the way through the gears like that. But also, one note I wanted to make is, first, yes, tuning your DSG will help you solve that problem. It will get your vehicle in the more optimal gearing for performance. But more importantly, what I wanted to mention is how you drive the car also dictates some of the ways that stuff learns. So you may want to do a capacitive discharge, which is where you take the battery cables off, make sure you have nothing hooked up, no power hooked up to the vehicle anywhere. You hold them together to make it forget everything. When you do that, it could lose some of the learned logic of the vehicle, and the car kind of adapts to your driving style. So sometimes people will actually have someone else borrow the car and then drive it. They then drive it a few days later and feel like something is weird. Sometimes that's because the car kind of tends to adapt. So driving style dictates how your transmission is going to shift a little bit, not completely, but somewhat. So that also could be the way it is. So if you're not putting heavy load on the car, because if you're just kind of coasting along and not putting any power down, it's more likely that you're going to push through the gears faster. Whereas if you put more throttle onto it, it's not going to shift the gears nearly as fast. So the way you drive the car also can dictate it, which means that light pedal application through the whole thing, even though maybe you're not looking to accelerate super fast, could help you not shift so quickly to a higher gear in that circumstance.
Captain Candycorn via YouTube says, why would a car bias brakes towards the rear? That sounds extremely counterintuitive. The front should have the majority of stopping power, thus wearing through the pads quicker.
Okay, so this comment was left on a video I shot recently talking about checking brake pads. It was a super 101 video that basically explains, for somebody who's not super familiar with inspecting cars or how to do so, how to determine brake pad wear and that type of stuff. And I mentioned that rear brakes on a lot of VW and Audi models tend to wear faster than the fronts. So this is kind of what he's thinking is actually not the accurate way to think about it. Yes, the rear brakes do tend to wear faster, but it's not because the vehicles are rear brake biased. It's because of the type, the engagement. I believe it's a combination of things. The engagement, because the car tends to engage rear first, not as in more brake bias, but as in the rear first, just to make sure that as it applies, that it doesn't nosedive as hard. So that's why. Also, the compound has a big effect on that. So the early Mark V cars had really a lot of brake problems that they were burning through rear brakes super fast, and they updated the part numbers and I think to alleviate that problem. So compound has something to do with it as well. So there's a combination of things, but just know the cars are not rear brake biased. They just tend to wear rear brakes because of the engineering behind it. And again, they're still front bias. Any car is going to be front brake bias because that's where your bigger brakes are on all vehicles.
Sean via YouTube says, I have a Mark V Jetta. Any idea on how to get the horn to work? I replaced a new fuse and horn. Still no luck.
Okay, so you're trying to take care of a horn on a Mark V Jetta. If you've checked your fuse and you've replaced your horn already, those are going to be your two most important things that I think would be good to check. You will want to next check if you have power at the horn. I can say you almost likely do not. It's very, 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 very likely that you have a bad clock spring. The clock spring is what keeps the electrical connection between your steering wheel and the vehicle. It has the ability to spin around and around and still have electrical connection. That's almost certainly what's bad. And so when you're hitting your horn, it's not actually getting contact through there because somewhere in your clock spring is messed up. So I'll make sure I link to clock springs that we have available in the description where you can check that out. But that is likely to be what you should be looking at for replacing to fix your horn.
Mark V GTI with a newer type TSI engine? Mark V in Europe is older TFSI engine with another engine cover. Can you or anyone explain this, please?
Okay, so what he's referring to is a video I recently shot about inspecting a Mark V when you're either purchasing a used one or if you already own one, how to do so and check over your vehicle. That car has a TSI engine. So here's what I wanted to say. I don't know specifically about European models because I don't know a ton about what was applicable in what year in Europe. It's not something I'm very experienced with, and so I can only speak to the US. So here's what happened in the US. In the US, we got the first Mark Vs in 2005, and then GTIs 2006 was actually kind of a split year for GTI. We had Mark IVs and Mark Vs. The FSI came in that car, 2006, 2007, both FSI cars. 2008 came. So 2008 had FSI in the early years, and then TSI in the late years. So what he's referring to is there's TSI engine, FSI engines. Major difference, one's timing belt driven, the other one's timing chain driven. Otherwise, they're kind of similar as far as power output, that type of stuff. So in the US, 2008 is a split year for those cars that could have either engine, and that includes things like GTIs, Jettas, EOSs, and Passats as well. All 4 of those cars could have had either engine if they are a 2008. Now, if they are a later year, 09 or later, it was all TSI cars and then FSI cars in an earlier one. The only exception to that being the Golf R, which it was a 2012, 2013 car, because the KO4 cars were already developed on the S3 in Europe, and so that was why they brought over basically the same FSI engine. They brought it back to the US, even though it had been out of those cars for some time, but they didn't have to do any R&D to get anything kind of together. They already had an all-wheel drive upgraded power platform that they used for the Golf R. So Golf R's had FSI, but that was the only car and the TTS, I'm sorry, because it was essentially a Golf R as well. So those 2 cars were going to be the cars that had FSIs later, but anything after 08, with that exception, would have been with a TSI engine. So hopefully that helps explain that scenario for you. Thanks so much for watching episode 120 of the Askdap Show, where I answer your Volkswagen Audi questions. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and also be sure to give us feedback. Do you want to see stuff on our new location? What would you like to see? Give us a little bit of feedback so we can make sure we're giving you guys what you're looking for in terms of inside baseball type stuff.